categories just to think about. In terms of our structure, there's an interlocal agreement between the city and the county, which formed MAPD. Prior to that, we were two separate departments. And the way that this shows up on your books is that you'll see it as a contractual. So we have staff, we have benefits, et cetera, through the city. And for you all, it's just a contractual, so you'll see one line item there. So you don't see salaries, you don't see benefits. Again, just a contractual line item. And it's split 50-50 between the city and the county. And we also account for fees, applications, and permits. So you got fees, applications, permits, and then what's left over is split 50-50 between the city and the county. And for zoning enforcement actions, the county reimburses the city for those. In terms of our challenges and opportunities, there's quite a few, and I'm excited about them. There are also some challenges that we just got to work through. And those are primarily staffing, technologies, and then a dynamic environment that we find ourselves in. In terms of staffing, we're pretty small. We have 17 staff. And where we find ourselves is that we currently have 4 vacancies, which amounts to 50% of our administration positions are vacant right now, and nearly like 40% of our current plans. We also have a number of retirements that are coming up, 2 next year to speak of, and these are senior positions with a lot of experience, and so we have to plan for how we're going to do that and make that transition, and that's very important. So what I would propose to do, this is the existing ones. I'll show you. Orange are positions that are currently vacant. You can see that 2 of them are in our management area, which really is a hamper, at least a challenge for me in terms of how we orchestrate everything, keep everything coordinated. We also have a planning tech position and administrative aid position that are currently vacant. And then the yellow shows what will be vacant in 2022, and that's our current planner who does historic preservation is retiring in February, I believe it is, and then our senior planner in the advanced plans division who does demographics, census data, works on vacation cases, et cetera, special reports, he will be retiring in November. We've been very fortunate, though, and I can't emphasize enough how much this has helped, and I'm so grateful for it, that we've been able to add 2 temporary part-time planners. We brought back a planner who had retired, who does current plans work, and we've had him helping us in current plans to take care of the cases, and I'll show you our caseload in just a moment. We've also been able to have an administrative aide come on part-time temporarily to help us out with the front desk and coordinating all those activities up front. So what I'm proposing is a reorg of the department. We have a number of senior staff who are working outside of their current position classifications, so we need to get them into the right classification. I'm also proposing that we have 2 associate planners who are very skilled. They've gained quite a number of years of experience, and I believe that really we need to promote them to be senior planners, and I think this is in the long-term interest of both the city and the county because they're well regarded, they do good work, they've got good experience, and I really think that this is an important step for them. The other thing I would like to do is I'd like to split it up. Right now there are 3 people who report directly to the director. I would like to include advanced plans as part of that, so there would be a 4th person in this scenario. And I'm moving support staff over to administration so that they can more effectively work across the department as opposed to being pigeonholed into one of the divisions. So that's staffing. I'm going to roll on over to technologies. Both a challenge and an opportunity. For a number of years, I think we've been behind, but the nice thing is that it gives us an opportunity to catch up. And I have to tell you, we're really riding on the coattails of MABCD. They fund the Hansen system, and they have an online portal where contractors can go in, they can log in, they can get their permits, they can check on the status of things. That is the same system that we are using, but we don't have the online portal set up to do all of our work in terms of submissions and whatnot. So my hope is that throughout this year, we're going to work on getting it where people can submit planning cases online. They can check on the status, they can see what it is. Just within the last 3 months, we've gotten a button up there so you can log in, you can check what a case is about based on the case number, and you can check on when the public hearings are happening. So we're just trying to get more robust public information out there. This year, we've also switched a lot to remote meetings, and we've really emphasized remote technologies such as cell phones, GPS, and laptops, similar to other departments. So the third thing then is a dynamic environment. Our applications can swing wildly from one closing date to the next. We have a closing date every 2 weeks. And for instance, the last few weeks, we've been running at about 20 cases coming in for MAPC consideration. It's very substantial, and I'll show you why. But this last closing date, which happened yesterday, we had 3 to 4 cases that came in. So it can vary quite significantly. The other thing that's come up is that there are special topics. Wind and solar is one that's come up here that we're working on. Another one is nightclubs in the city for the city of Wichita. So from time to time, those things come up. Another one is short-term rentals, such as Airbnbs that we're working on. So those can come up with very little notice. And the other thing, too, is working on implementation update of all of our plans that we've got in progress or have done previously. So here's a graph that shows our caseload. The yellow/orangish line shows these are cases that go on an MAPC agenda but are not subdivision cases because there are separate planners that take care of those. I wanted to segregate these out. And what you can see here compared to 2018 is that our caseload is significantly higher this year, and there's quite a bit of volatility in terms of how that's covered. I estimate that our capacity, if we are assigning staff and they're able to spend a thorough amount of time, with our current staffing, we can handle about 9 to 10 cases, non-subdivision cases per MAPC meeting. We are double that in some of these meetings. So, and we've consistently been that way for the last 1, 2, I'd say about 5 different meetings. But like I said, relief has just come around the corner. We're down to a low count for this next MAPC meeting. But you can see that our caseload of non-subdivision cases that go on MAPC agendas is ramping up significantly. So it went from 114 in 2018 to right now we're already at 140 year to date. So just want to emphasize we're doing quite a bit of work. In terms of our budget request, we have a baseline budget request, and then I'll talk to you about some options that I hope that you'll approve. So our baseline is we're requesting $600,902,000 and some odd for 2022. Again, this shows up as contractuals because it's a 50-50 split, and you share with the city. And the increase there is for staff costs, benefits. So the two options, the decision packages that I hope that you'll consider is furniture upgrades and caseload support. And I'll explain what I mean by those. Furniture upgrades, we seriously have desks in our office that were probably produced around World War II. I think they would make relatively decent shelters if you needed a shelter in place, but they're very bad and very poor for typing on a computer. They were around before computers could fit in a room. So we're hoping to get those replaced. And again, this is a request of $12,000, and we would match that. We're hoping the city will approve something similar so that I think
Jim Weber could use those desks in his office.
He might be able to. Yeah, he's nodding his head. So we'll have to talk afterwards. Maybe for some cookies. I hear the cookies are pretty good. The second one then is caseload support, and what I'm requesting here is $7,500. Again, match it with the city, so it'd make it $15,000, and it would be a pool of funding that we could use to have our part-time temporary assistants help us out with cases when we get a high volume of cases coming in for MAPC agendas. And if we didn't need them, we wouldn't use them for a meeting, but when we need them, we can call them and have them come in and help us out, and that's what that $15,000 would accomplish. So that's a really brief overview of the budget, and I'll stand for any questions.
Okay. Commissioner Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Scott, I'm really excited to see that your caseload's going up, because what I've found from the years that I worked with MAPC is that when the economy was improving, the number of cases you got were improving. When the economy is going down, why, it was pretty boring. So I think it's a direct reflection of what's happening in our economy, and as long as we keep moving forward, you're going to see more and more cases, actually. So it's just a comment. Thank you.
Okay, Scott, so these part-time that you just bring in when you need, or those are the retired people that have already
Yes, we have a gentleman
trained and
Yes, we've convinced him to come back, amazingly. So, and we've been very fortunate that he comes in and he'll work like 2-3 cases, and we can flex his hours up or down
good,
depending on what
good.
we need.
Good for you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, well presented. Thank you, Scott. I think we understand what you're needing.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for all you do. Tell your staff thank you.
Will do.
Okay.
Our next presentation is the Vision of Human Resources. Will be on page 69 of your binders, and Sheena Schmutz will be presenting. 69.
Hello, Sheena.
Good afternoon. Well, before I get started, I want to take a moment just to give a quick update on two things that will not be presented in my budget. The first one is the comp update. I know you have sat through several presentations where you have heard about the compensation issues with staff. Our department has been working with every department. We've had meetings with every department, including the DA and the sheriff. Some departments we've had multiple meetings with, and we are happy to report that we are working well with every department, and we have multiple, I would say almost at least half of our employees, we will be recommending some sort of reclassification for them. So I just want you to know, in the background, we are doing a lot of work on that end. We hear those needs, and we are working with those departments. So just wanted you to be aware of that. And then the second thing I wanted to update you on was a meeting that we had with IMA, who is our health consultant, and we are anticipating our budget for health insurance next year to actually come in lower than what was anticipated. Lindsay and her team usually budget about 5% for that increase, and we are anticipating a 3% increase for 2022. So that is some good news. Not solidified yet, but we were very happy to hear that.
All right. Thank you.
So next I will jump into our human resources budget. Again, we'll be on page 69 of your budget book. The one thing we will be discussing today is only the general fund. Of course, if you look in the budget book, you will see a lot of the health and wellness fund, 611, incorporated into there, but we are only looking at our general fund today. This is one of our organizational charts. We have 18.25 FTEs, which equates to about 22 positions. We were very fortunate to have 2 COVID positions join us last year to help us with the FFCRA, and so you can see those indicated in red on our org chart. We currently have 17 full-time employees and 4 part-time positions, and one of those is open and vacant. Our mission is to support all divisions of Sedgwick County and is committed to hiring and retaining skilled individuals who can lead, innovate, and deliver exceptional public services. In all our interactions, human resources models respect, engages in problem solving, and acts with integrity. And the 6 key areas that I'm going to highlight today are HR administration, compensation and classification, work environment, employment, employee training and development, and as I mentioned before, benefits is included, but we will not address that today. These are some of our challenges as well as opportunities in human resources. Of course, the first one being the recommendations for employees' compensation and reclassification. This is an ongoing project, and we know that when we come forth with our recommendations for the 2022 budget, that it doesn't end there. So we will also be proposing many strategies moving forward, so that way we don't get in situations where we're making big leaps and bounds is what we're anticipating in 2022. In our strategic plan, we also have a market analysis every 5 years, and we would like to be committed to that, so that way we can keep on track with our compensation and keep moving that forward in the years. We know that that will take money, and we will work with finance and the leadership team every 5 years to ensure that we are moving forward on that. We also have an increased caseload for our FML, our family medical leave, and our ADA cases. We also have continued COVID cases. Even though it seems like we're through the bulk of COVID cases, we are still experiencing those within our employee population now. We have many employees that call in multiple times a day seeking guidance on leave. Even sometimes they just want reassurance that they can take leave to be in quarantine. So we are still actively dealing with COVID cases. Again, one of our challenges is organizational recruitment and collaboration efforts. I think you've heard about that from several departments that they're looking in the pipeline and what are things that we can do in the future to help departments in that area. Another challenge we have is employee survey tools. I think, again, we've heard about that from departments, so maybe it's nice that I'm getting to stand up here and reiterate some of their concerns that have been voiced before. We would like to have a survey tool that we could reach out and get better feedback from our employees. Innovative opportunities for employee training. COVID presented a real challenge for us that we could not present in-person training anymore. And as you heard Mike Elper speak yesterday, that we are requesting a new training platform that we can do better online training for our employees, recognizing that this is how we're keeping up with the requirements of the workforce, but also being able to reach them in a manner that we can't do now because of COVID reasons. And then finally, one of our challenges as well as opportunities is continued employee engagement. Our budget is relatively flat. You can see the bulk of our funding goes for personnel. And again, this is just in the general fund. We have swapped a little bit with contractual and commodities. But other than that, our budget goes down roughly 1.64%. And we're requesting $1,542,199. I do have one decision package for you to consider today, and this is the request for additional personnel, and this would be in our work environment section. And this is due to the increased workload for our FML and our ADA position. Currently, we have one person in that position who really the entire organization relies on when there is an FML or an ADA request. And to date, just to give you some numbers, in 2020, she worked 470 intermittent FML cases, and to date, as of March, she's already worked 324. And so it does show that, again, every single one of those individuals needs to be addressed. Timely paperwork needs to go out, and again, we are just seeing the volume increase. And I also will mention that in 2020 alone, in addition to our 2 temporary staff, we serviced over 1,000 FFCRA requests for time off. And again, that all flowed through that office. We often see that this position is putting in several hours after working hours to ensure that deadlines are being met and employees' questions are being answered. Because often is the case with FML, employees need reassurance, they need guidance on what to do. So that is our only request, and that is for $57,407, and again, additional 1 FTE.
Okay. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. So talking about reclassification, we talked yesterday when we were discussing giving additional money to, say, EMS. And there was mention of, because of the job titles and the job classification numbers, if we gave something to one classification in one department, it wouldn't be fair among other departments. So my question is, EMS and all of our departments are completely different in what they do and how they function. And so if you have, one entry-level person in one department, are they considered the same in the other department? Hypothetically, generally speaking.
So your classification in your example would be such as the paramedic. So that would be distinct from someone else in the same grade, if you will.
So what is the grade of a paramedic?
Oh, off the top of my head, I would have to look. I don't know if anyone knows that off the top of their head. 124? 124?
Okay.
And there's several classifications within a 124.
Okay, so there could be a 124 in the health department?
Yes.
There could be a
Yes.
124 in public works?
Yes.
So because we would consider giving more money to a 124 in EMS, it would be unfair according to what we talked about yesterday, to give a 124 more money as a paramedic, and then we didn't do it for a 124 in Public Works. Is that kind of what we were talking about yesterday?
So if you gave the paramedics an increase, it would not mean that everyone in a 124 across the board would get a raise. That's not what that means. But if you do give any sort of pay adjustment to that paramedic, there could be ripple effects from that because of the classifications above and below that paramedic within EMS.
Let's talk about comm care clinicians too, and the paramedics. So when we went into the reclassification study, the comparative analysis you use is, for paramedics, is other paramedics in the region and competitively. Comm care clinicians, the same way you do comparative analysis. What you end up discovering when you go through that exercise is, when you look at clinicians, for example, who are required to have master's degree and certifications, they were significantly underclassified in the old system. With EMS, paramedics, with the job changing and the complexities of that job, we also found that they were underclassified in this organization. So part of the reconciliation that we're going to present to you all is to course correct that going into 2022 to get those classifications back to a level where they should be, based on the formal education needed, based on complexity of work, based on independence of work, and a number of issues that Sheena's staff looked at. So at the end of the day, though, when somebody ends up in a classification of a 125 across the spectrum, there should be some semblance of equity there organizationally. So a 125 that works in the sheriff's office, for example, and one that works in comm care, their job descriptions and what they do in a day and how they serve the public, there should be some equity there because their pay is somewhat equitable. So that's why this has been such a challenging assignment for HR and Wichita State, those that helped us, so that we could be as fair as possible going forward, that we had the right job descriptions. That's another thing we found when we went into this, is that some of the job descriptions in the departments were not up to speed, not accurate. Well, that's the first thing you have to fix. Then based on those job descriptions, Sheena and her staff and the crew from Wichita State went in and assigned reclassifications to that. I don't know if I'm answering your question. It's a very complicated system. We have so many different kinds of positions, but there should be some basic fairness across the spectrum of the organization.
And thank you for that explanation. I guess what I'm trying to get after is that even if someone is making the same as someone else in a different department, they don't have the same duties. They don't have the same, they don't have the same risk factors. I mean, there's a lot of things I think that go into it rather than pay. And so I guess I'm wondering, how do we take that into account? And how do we make sure that those people who are a 125 in one department and then somebody else who's and I'll pick on finance again, because you have people who are in an office setting all day, and they might be, whatever the classification is, making the same as someone who is in a EMS truck, driving around the street, seeing, taking care of people at their worst moments in their lives, and they're making the same money, but they're in the same classification. And if we as a commission decide that we want to give the EMS a raise, and you're saying it has to be equitable for the folks in finance, do you see what I'm saying? You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, you want to.
So,
I think historically, the issue has been, we've had different pay plans over the years, and we've had different classifications over the years, and they have gotten out of whack over time because we don't keep necessarily our job descriptions most up to date. I think one of the things that we've dealt with in the past is when those things happen, there's compression that happens. Maybe we do some adjustments for EMS for one particular group of employees, and then maybe we don't invest on the top end, and so you have people who get compressed within a system. Or then we have in the past, and I think we're talking about slightly different things with this reclassification, but within a grade, we have had concerns about trying to have parity and equity across those grades. And I think that's something that Sheena's work, because we're looking at all those nuances, what level of risk are you dealing with in your job? Are you somebody has said to us at one point in time in finance, we're not packing parachutes. To draw an analogy to what you're doing with EMS. So I think all of those different factors now are driving us in a slightly different direction than maybe where we have been. But part of the problem too is just the logistics of funding that. If we have salary savings in EMS, we can do that, but it throws off the long-term financials, because you do a base pay increase in this year, that ripples into future years. That is a tax-funded program, and so that has been really more of the logistical challenge we face specifically with EMS, is less about the classification, more about the budget and the forecasting financial side of the table. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, but is it solving our problem?
What do you, tell me.
Well, our problem with people leaving because of pay. I mean, I guess I just want to make sure if we're going to fix our system, right? We're going through this whole reclassification because are we doing it, how are we taking into account all the risk factors? So is someone, let's just say, if someone is going to, I'm just using this as an example, if someone's a 125 as a paramedic or whatever it is, and a 125 in a different department, are they comparable just because of salary?
No. So what we are doing and what we've been doing for the past several months is we have been reviewing every job description. So we do take things into account that Tom mentioned. So required education level, risk to the jobs, autonomy on the jobs, responsibility for budget, things of that nature, decision-making processes, individual versus group decision-making. And we look at all of that and we look where they're at in that grade, and then we comparatively look across the organization of everyone that is in that grade. And we have been making our recommendations again, based on all of those assignments. So every job was reviewed and it was scored, if you will, on a position matrix. So there are some jobs that have higher decision-making responsibility where others have higher customer service, if that makes sense. And we're looking at all of those across the board, across the organization. So it is not based on money. In fact, when we were looking at our grade reclassification recommendations that we're going to put forth and meet with leadership later on next week, pay was not one of those factors. It was looking at the job duties for that position. Now, we will apply a level of market value onto that as well to see, based on these recommendations, how close does that get us to market? We know that it's going to move that needle at some point. But money is not the decision-making factor when we look at grade placement.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other comments and questions? Don't see any. So thank you, Sheena.
Okay, thank you.
And thanks to your staff. I know they work really hard. So.
Okay, Commissioners, we have gotten to our last presentation, the Division of Administrative Services. We'll be starting on page 279 of your binders, and Tanya Cole is here to present.
Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, Commissioners, and Chairman Tanya Cole, Assistant County Manager with the Division of Administrative Services.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so this afternoon we will be covering departments including Central Services on page 279, and then I've listed out the other pages to include Courthouse Police, Fleet, and Facilities. And this afternoon with us, we have Jennifer Scriven, who is our Acting Central Services Manager, Chief Darrell Haynes, Fleet Manager Penny Poland, and Facilities Director Andrew Diltz. So the mission for Administrative Services is to provide support to county departments and safe and efficient facilities for the community and employees to conduct business and access needed public services. So again, we will start with Central Services on page 279. Okay, Central Services provides support to the organization through the print shop, which uses a mix of in-house printing and outsourcing to leverage the most cost-efficient production option for print jobs. And as well, we use the mailroom, which processes and provides postage for all outgoing mail pieces for the county and district court. They also help us with our interoffice mail. They assist with planning and creation of large mailing to ensure achieving lowest postage rate for each job. Within central services also is the combined call center, which is the tax call center, which takes calls for the tag office, which is the treasurer. They take calls for the tag office and the tax office, as well as the appraiser's office. And then we have the public services call center, which takes calls for ComCare and the health department. And then during election years, they also take calls for the elections office. And then we have records management under central services, and they oversee management of records in accordance with county records management policy and Kansas Government Records Prevention Act. They also provide CORA training and assist with compliance. Central services funding is 100% county general fund. And some of the challenges and opportunities within central services, which are mostly opportunities, they have considered possibly the merger of tax and public services call center into one unit, seeing if there might be a possibility for efficiency within those employees. So they're going to look into possibly a merger there. They would also like to look into a software program to see if that might be helpful from a customer service standpoint. And that would what that would do would bring in a web chat and text messaging program into the call center there. Also, what that would do would bring in a customer relationship management tool, which would, if they have a customer that calls in and has previously called in, it kind of starts at that point from previously what that customer was calling in for, to see if there's a point of contact there where they could help from the previous call to help with that current call. They are also looking into a possible potential merge with the city of Wichita to create a joint 311 system. I don't know if that's something that is something we want to look into, but I think they would like to at least have a conversation and explore that. Also, they want to look into a e-records policy. I think what happens there is a lot of times our employees tend to keep a lot of our documents on our system and don't necessarily destroy that according to our state retention schedule. I think sometimes we easily get rid of our paper documents, but not necessarily our e-records. And so we need to look into a policy and convene a work group there of records, IT, legal, and other county stakeholders to put that policy together. So some opportunities there for central services. So our 2022 budget request, just a little bit under 1%. 2022 request is $2,621,740. We do have one decision package, and that is for midterm election postage. We did confer with Election Commissioner Tabitha Lehman on this, and that is for next year for the municipal and gubernatorial election. And this would be used for advanced voting flyers, advanced mail ballots, new registration postcards, and then any unknown state mandates that we would have to send anything out. So the request there is for $100,000. And that is the only decision package we have within central services there. So I'll stop there and see if you have any questions on central services. Okay. I will move on then to Courthouse Police, and you can find information on Courthouse Police, page 751. Okay, Courthouse Police is the safety and security provider and serves as law enforcement first responders for Courthouse Campus, the Juvenile Courthouse Facilities, Ronald Reagan Building, and the County Parking Garage. The division ensures a secure environment for visitors and occupants of the courthouses through a uniformed police presence that performs entry screening, preventative patrols, and first response, which includes enforcing state laws and county resolutions. Courthouse police officers Also serve as the subject matter experts on access control, surveillance, camera systems, and installation. Courthouse police funding is 100% funded through the county general fund. Some of the challenges with courthouse police is recruiting and retention. Pay for courthouse police officers. Currently, a starting wage for courthouse police commission officer is $14.66, with an officer that has 20 years of police experience at $16.12. And so what we have found in courthouse police is there seems to be a lot of turnover, with pay being the issue there. Training and certification issues. With COVID, a lot of the training has been remote. Courthouse police has a very slim budget, and so something that they are concerned about over the next few years is that they do not have a training budget. They have been able to utilize free training, but they're starting to see that training is starting to come at a cost. And so just something that they are thinking about on the horizon. Also, we heard through the sheriff's office. Yes, sir.
Commissioner Lopez
Yeah.
has a question.
Sorry, I just have a question
Sure.
real quick. You said courthouse police are responsible for the security cameras and all of that? Is
That's
that-
correct.
Is any other department responsible for their own security cameras, or does IT provide that service?
We basically take care of all of the security cameras within the courthouse complex. Now, for the jail, the adult detention facility, sheriff takes care of that, as well as the jail annex. They control their own cameras, but for the most part, in our facilities, courthouse police will monitor those cameras.
Okay, so they monitor them. Do they also install them, run this, like if there's an issue, work with the vendor? They do all of that?
Courthouse police does. Now, we had a CIP project where we worked with project services to install those. So courthouse police won't necessarily install. We will work with a vendor. But if there are issues with our cameras, courthouse police will work with a vendor on those issues.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Okay. As we heard from the sheriff, the cost of ammunition has gone up, and so that's a concern for courthouse police. Similar issue, just cost of ammunition for practice, qualification, and issue. Just the point to make here is that certification and qualifications are needed to maintain for courthouse police to prevent civil liability. Just one thing to point out, all of the entry procedures from the courthouse here, the main courthouse, as well as the juvenile courthouse, have been modified, and they are still screening visitors for COVID. One thing I just want to point out, Daryl and his staff received an award. It's called the Liberty Bell Award from the Wichita Bar Association today. They were nominated by the Young Lawyers Committee for their entry procedures during the pandemic, and just their professionalism throughout the courthouse and continuing to operate. So I just want to give kudos to Daryl and his staff for receiving that Liberty Bell Award. Courthouse Police 2022 budget request, just a little bit under 2%. So request is for $1,438,582. So I'll stop there and ask if there's any questions on courthouse police budget.
Don't see any.
Okay, I'll move on then to fleet management, page 299. Okay. Fleet management provides the right vehicles, equipment, and effective fuel services together with timely maintenance and repairs. And the purpose there is to minimize equipment downtime and disruptions. Fleet funding is 100% through fleet management, which is an internal service fund. Fleet challenges and opportunities, we're beginning to see increased technology and equipment, which requires the technicians there to be trained and up to date with that increased technology. And we are starting to see the rising costs of vehicles and equipment. Fleet 2022 budget request is there is a decrease of 13%, so a total 2022 request of $10,087,043. And I'll stand for any questions for fleet management. Okay. If not, we will move on to facilities, page 273, and Andrew Diltz, facility manager, will come up for this.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Andrew Diltz, your facilities director. We're going to go ahead and get started here with the looking at our org chart. We have facilities maintenance on the left-hand side of the org chart, divided up into columns or silos, if you will. The North Maintenance Group is responsible for a certain territory of buildings. Same with adult detention. They mainly focus at the jail, don't really drift too far outside of that location. Then we have a group of gentlemen that take care of ComCare, DOC, and Extension Office, kind of remote locations. And then we have another group known as the South Maintenance that take care of essentially any building that's south of Kellogg. They office out of JDF. And they also have an in-house custodial team, which is required given that location and their exposure to juveniles at JDF and juvenile residential facility. And we have another group, project services. We have 3 project managers. Each one is essentially responsible for approximately $9 million worth of CIP projects on a given year. And then we have our some office staff, David Perricone, who oversees our office staff, and the contracted custodial section of our department. So the majority of our buildings have contracted custodial. We have a couple in-house, but for the most part, it's all contracted outside of JDF and juvenile residential. I will point out on this slide before we jump, the trade specialist 4 positions. We have 4 of those. And we're going to talk about those here in a moment. 3 of those 4 positions are currently vacant. Facilities funding is primarily funded with the County General Fund. And the 5-year challenges and opportunities for facilities, I think we can all attest to the fact that construction costs in the last year or 2 have really blown up due to COVID. Due to the cold spell that we had in February, it's taken a toll on the cost of construction materials. They've been on the rise for quite some time, but they've really jumped in the last year. And then we have equipment that goes obsolete due to lack of parts. As the parts and materials components are getting more sophisticated, we're introducing computers into a lot of equipment, HVAC equipment, for example. The computers, things get phased out pretty quick. So we're having to buy new parts that may or may not work fully for the equipment that it's going into. Let me rephrase that. We can buy parts that go into equipment, but you may be paying a premium for the part because it has so many electronics on it, but we can't utilize all of the electronics because it's going into a piece of equipment that may be 20 years old, doesn't have the same computer components. And then we're also have difficulty with the EPA regulations. Take, for example, refrigerant. As we move through refrigerant and they get better and better for the environment, it makes it more difficult for us to maintain when we can no longer buy that refrigerant. We have to look at replacing the entire piece of equipment. Then we go into space planning. As we expand the offices and the buildings, we have to look at increasing our maintenance and operational costs. Sometimes staffing, it just kind of depends on how large we go or how much we expand. And then we have some buildings that are aging, and with that, we are losing some contractor expertise. So I'll mention it was last year or the year before, we had some crown molding at historic courthouse fall down. It was very, very difficult to find somebody that could come work on that crown molding. It was something that was built on site with materials that they had on site. And so sourcing that kind of stuff today can be very difficult. And then we also face extreme weather events. So our big portion of our budget goes to utility costs. If we have a warm summer, it can be devastating to our budget. A few degrees on average for a month. It costs us a lot extra to cool, as well as the wear and tear on our equipment. And then we have contractor availability and high demand pricing. So the recent cold spell in February, plumbers, HVAC technicians, everybody was slammed with calls and trying to source those individuals to come help us at our facilities when we were having issues. You're on a waiting list. So it really came into play that we had knowledgeable staff on hand that could respond at a moment's notice for us. And then we have our wages. So the Kansas Department of Labor 2018 data, and I apologize, that's 3 years old. That's the most current data we could get from the Department of Labor. The average HVAC technician makes $26 an hour. The bottom 25% of that starts out around $21 an hour. The private sector in Wichita, the union requiring 4 years of experience makes around $35 an hour. Non-union makes around $28 to $32 an hour. Our trade force specialist position is currently starting out just shy of $19 an hour. There's a pretty good jump in cost there, and it can make it very difficult for us to try to appeal to some of the individuals in those fields, in those specialty fields. If you look at the maintenance worker position underneath the Department of Labor, they're averaging around $18 an hour. Entry level, or 25%. First 25% is around $13.40. And we are requiring 2 years experience for a maintenance 2, and we're starting them out at $12 an hour. The facilities 2022 budget request is going down about 5%. The 2022 requested dollar amount is $7,637,749. And I will stand for any questions.
Any questions? Don't see any.
Okay, so total division summary, we have just under 9% there, 8.29% decrease for a total 2022 request of $21,785,114. And we do have that one decision package in central services for midterm election postage at $100,000. And so happy to stand for any questions that you might have.
Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you, Chairman. So last week I asked about our energy audit update.
Correct. We were going to give that just after this presentation, but happy to bring Andrew back up right now.
Oh, great.
Okay. I don't have a presentation prepared for this, but I do have some notes here to try to keep me on track. In late 2019, beginning of 2020, just before COVID arrived, we presented an option to install a solar system at the Extension Office. The result of that conversation and those meetings was that we went out for an RFI for an energy audit and an RFB for an energy audit and awarded, I'm sorry, let me back up. The Extension Office, the solar panels that we're going to install, I think that they cost right around $225,000 in CIP funds. We secured those funds and decided to do an energy audit to see if installing solar was the way we wanted to go out there, if we wanted to do an energy audit and identify some other savings that we could have at this facility or others. We went out for an RFB last year, and on-site evaluations were completed shortly after the RFB was awarded. We had 18 buildings on the energy audit. We identified high power consumers, 24-hour facilities, and we included the Extension Office as a option for renewable energy. We had a delay in compiling the utility bills for all of those locations and getting those evaluated, and our final report was just completed just a couple of weeks ago. As a result of the report, it identifies around 150 to 200 energy conservation measures or things that we could do to save money. The total, if we were to do all of those conservation measures, would cost us $49 million. It would produce a savings of $1.1 million with an ROI, or return on investment, being 45 years. Because we're not looking to implement all of those energy conservation measures, we're going to sit down and evaluate which ones are feasible and which ones are not. Some of these we can do in-house. Some of them we're already doing. For example, replacing the existing lights with LEDs. We're also going to look into adding evaporative coolers and doing some water conservation measures that were identified in the audit. We're going to sit down with staff and see how much we can do with this within our operational budget, and try to knock out some of the lower hanging fruit just as quickly as we can. Then with the $225,000 that we have in CIP funds, we're going to be looking at doing some things that we can't necessarily absorb within our operational budget. That's going to be items like replacing transformers, maybe doing some power factor corrections, and some building commissioning. We're going to meet with stakeholders. That's going to include facilities maintenance, project services, finance, and try to review all of these energy conservation measures and see what's going to be most feasible for us. The remaining energy conservation measures that we cannot complete in-house or with the $225,000 in CIP funding, we'll submit for a CIP project on its own. The solar component, we had solar evaluated at all of the buildings that were on the energy audit, all 18, which included the extension office. We'll evaluate the results of those solar options at those buildings, and we'll implement those if feasible as a CIP project as well. I want to remind everyone that last year we entered into an agreement with Evergy, the DRPS Renewable Energy Agreement, which produced, I believe we purchased roughly 80% of our electrical use from wind generation. And that's providing us a savings of approximately $60,000 to $80,000 annually as well. And hopefully here soon we'll have a plaque or something that we can put on our buildings that have the renewable energy that we're buying that power from and putting that power into these buildings. And I'll stand for any questions.
Not a bad report for not being prepared. Right? Pretty good.
Yeah.
Did you get what you?
Well, my question is, out of the money that we allocated to do the energy audit, what did the actual audit cost?
The actual energy audit cost less than $14,000.
Okay, so the remaining funds within that, because we as a commission allocated those funds to do the audit. Did we allocated them to do the audit and do any repairs?
So the $14,000 came out of facilities operational budget.
So the money that we allocated is still there?
Yes. And it's rough. It's between $225,000, $226,000.
Okay. And Andrew, can you do me a favor and send me again, I probably have it in here, but the original proposal from King Solar?
For the extension office?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. Andrew, thanks for your comments. I notice we have Penny's in the office. Good to see you again, and thanks for all you do. And is that Daryl there in the corner? The award-winning Daryl? Well done. Congratulations on that award. That's very complimentary. So, well done. I don't think is there somebody else back there I should recognize? Tell me. I'm sorry.
Commissioner back there is Jennifer Scriven. She's our acting central services manager.
Okay. Hi, Jennifer. Sorry. Didn't recognize you with your face on, so to speak. Okay. Let's just move on. Thanks.
Okay, that was our last presentation, so we do have time for discussion scheduled.
Okay. Well, Commission, what's your desire? Which way do we want to go on that? There's so much information we've had in the last few days. Personally, I'm just still trying to digest it all. Seemed like a common theme is, pay. And thank you, Sheena, for updating us that looks like we're not quite as behind as far as trying to get something going as what was first presented with some of the department heads saying that they're in dire straits, which they are, but you're on it, and that's helpful to know that it's being recognized. That's
I think
mine.
while you're thinking, Commission, we could just maybe talk about next steps. Now that the BOCC has heard the overview of the budget and what the needs are, I would ask you, well, before I do that, the next steps will be for staff, and we've already got budget meetings scheduled for as soon as next week. We will have a series of budget meetings internally now, digesting what we have heard from you, and begin to build the 2022 recommended budget.
Okay.
As we do that, we will be consulting with you off and on to get clarity on some things we heard. I know Lorian took, I think she maybe is on her second notebook here, but a lot of us were taking notes throughout this process, and we will be going over those notes and trying to factor into the budget everything that was important to this commission. I guess what I'd like to hear today, or if not today, soon, other workshops that you want to have to discuss issues that we could not get deep enough into in this setting. For example, the Mental Health Coalition workshop will be next Tuesday. Are there other issues like that where you want something set into workshop? And we've got some notes here where I think we heard that maybe we do need a workshop or two, but I'd be curious to hear what you have to say on that. Are there any decision packages of the decision packages you heard that you just see as gotta have? We have to have that. That would be good to know from commissioners. Any feedback on CIP? And we got a lot of feedback today. We took notes. We will go in and get some further clarification on a few of these CIP items. But if there's anything on there that you see as got to have or you want moved up in the schedule, that would be good to know. And then I think we want to talk a little bit about public meetings. We're a little bit out of whack on schedule this year because of some state changes. We had talked about it in a meeting a week or two ago of tentative public meetings, and I think we want to revisit that today before we depart so that Lorian can schedule in those public meetings to what the commission wants to have. So any of those items are for discussion. One thing that we have to discuss before we leave is when do you want the public meetings? And we can get a calendar open to start talking about dates on that and how you want those to happen.
Okay, a couple of lights are on, but I think the public meeting, as soon as Commissioner Dennis has had his last, you had your last shot yet?
Yeah, and Chairman, I'm talking about the public meeting for the budget.
Oh, okay.
For the, bringing the people in and presenting to the people the budget.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Howell.
All right, thank you, Chairman. And I'm glad you ended on that note because I do think that is a priority. I would advocate as one commissioner at least. I think we need to have at least one public meeting in the evening available to. And I think it should be early enough in the process that we can pivot to change the budget if necessary based on what we hear from the people. So that is a desire that I have.
Let's stop there, Commissioner, and let me
Sure.
clarify. When is the budget hearing date in front of the commission? August
25th.
20, okay, so if we work backwards from the 25th in advance, what do you feel comfortable with? I mean, how many, and maybe you want to chime in too?
I just want to have one comment. Let me get right in your face.
Well, you show the first public hearing on the 21st of July, according to the book.
And I think that's kind of what we want to look at is make sure that you're comfortable with that schedule. And I think the July 21st public hearing, can that still happen under the current?
It sure can. I think, so we are required to have a hearing the day you adopt the budget, which is August 25th. So that is a certain hearing that we must have. And then I think we have the one, as mentioned, that's on July 21st. That won't meet your 10-day requirement from last update on July 14th. Remember, we have to do a publication and 10 days notice and all that. So I think we have a lot of flexibility other than August 25th, which is a must-have on the day of budget adoption.
So Lindsay, if I'm hearing you correctly, July 14th is a Wednesday. We have to go 10 days past that.
So the way the state law works, and Senate Bill 13 did not change this, On July 14th, you're going to have your recommended budget. Lorian will also most likely present last update that day, which is when we say, here's the maximum property tax levy that we could consider imposing and the maximum budget that you could consider adopting. That then gets published in the Derby Informer on the 21st. And so then we have to have at least one hearing 10 days past the 21st. So that fits pretty nicely with your next meeting then on August 4th or later. But we just need to know that date, time, and location so that Lorian can include that in the publication that goes in the Derby Informer.
So August 4th is a Wednesday, morning or evening. Go ahead, sir.
Well, the problem with August the 4th, I assume we'll have a BOCC meeting that morning at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we need to have an evening meeting for the public. And, this is not minimum that the law requires. This is going above and beyond what's required. Let me go backwards. I think before, we only required to have one public hearing, and we had two, and we weren't even counting the budget adoption day. That was in addition to, so we went from whatever was required before. We had two before, one was a morning, one was an evening, and then we also had budget adoption day, which was, of course, a Wednesday. So I don't want to do the 4th, because again, I think that's going to conflict with our BOCC regular schedule, but may I suggest maybe a Tuesday or Thursday in the evening, like 6 p.m. roughly? And again, maybe no one shows up. I have no idea whether people will show up or not. We've had as many as 2 or 3 hours. We've had no one show up in the past. It just depends on what's going on.
August 5th is a Thursday, PM, 6 o'clock.
It might be easier, because again, if we do it on the 3rd, that's an evening before our BOCC, that may not be ideal. I think the 5th would be better.
Yeah.
You're saying August 5th
Yes.
in the evening? That's all right? That's fine.
Are we set on having it here, or should, if we're gonna be accessible to the public, should it be in a more accessible place that is easier to get in and out of?
Extension Center or something?
We've done it here, and Daryl's staff allows access into the building even past hours, but it's totally up to the commission. It is easier, I'll just make the general statement, we've been through this before. It's easier for us to broadcast and record and do video and all the things we do from here.
I understand that, but we're having a meeting for the public, and so I think, could we make it easier for the public?
Sure.
I understand that, I don't want to put anybody in a bind, but if we want people to show up, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, it's just a proposal.
Well, if we have an overflow, they can just come in, right?
Sure. I'm not going to turn around and look at Tony when I say this, because I'll get glared at, but the Extension Center and the zoo, there's places you can have a meeting publicly and to make it easier for the public.
Right.
I just don't know what our, he'll tell me after the meeting what's wrong with that, but it's possible we can meet wherever the commission wants to meet the public.
If it's an evening meeting, we're not going to be broadcasting KPTS. This is going to be recorded
It would be,
and posted.
it would be streaming in Facebook. And
I
just
don't know
like
that
we're
it
doing.
matters that we do it live necessarily. It's nice to be live, at least on YouTube or Facebook if we can. The most important thing is that we record it and that people can have access to the meeting whenever. Again, if we can do it live, that's great, and I'm always in favor of that. I would say a few years ago when I was chairman, we tried to do district meetings in the evening. We had, since we have 5 commission districts, we gave each commissioner a chance to host a meeting in their district, and we did that 1 year in the evening, and it was mixed opinion on whether that was a good idea or a bad idea. I still kind of like the idea of doing some of our meetings in the evening intentionally, just for the very same reason Commissioner Cruz pointed out, that some of these folks can't really meet with us on Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. I think that it's a deficiency of county government that we tend to settle on this schedule, and it's not ideal for the people that we serve. They can't really access us very well if they're all working, and we're on Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. So I like the idea of having a regular schedule once in a while and getting it out in the public. But if we're going to have one evening meeting, this is centrally located, and it's only one. If you do it at the extension office or whatever, that may not be as easy for some people either, especially if it's early in the evening, so. I don't mind doing it here in this case. But okay, either way.
All right, so August 4th, 6 o'clock.
August 4th is a Wednesday. We were talking
Oh,
August 5th,
August.
I think.
August 5th.
Sorry.
August 5th.
August 5th, 6
Thursday.
o'clock.
Chairman, if you don't mind, I have a couple of other comments as well.
Sure.
Okay. One of the things I'll just throw this out there again. I know we talked recently about things like PTO, maybe a better retirement program, personal time off, I should say, that would replace our typical sick leave and vacation policy. Those are things we can do to help recruit and retain employees. I think that there's things we're not really competitive with the private sector. We talk an awful lot about wages in the private sector, but we're just not competitive when it comes to the entire package. The private sector is doing a lot of things that government, frankly, I think is way behind on. But one of the things that I think that would be helpful to employees and it's relatively inexpensive would be long-term or short-term disability insurance. Again, if we start talking about ways to incentivize folks, if they don't need to have this gigantic amount of PTO saved up, and again, we almost encourage them to use sick days as they get them, because these folks are not necessarily planning to be here a long time. There's not a lot of incentive to save up sick days necessarily. I do think long-term and short-term disability ought to be something we ought to look at as a county that would help balance out those other ideas. And I didn't hear anything about that today. I'll just bring that up as another thing I'd like to talk about going forward. This has been a long process this last 5 days. Just in case you didn't count them, this is the 32nd item on our schedule. And I do want to commend the staff. You've done a tremendous job being prepared. I think the staff overwhelmingly did a very, very good job at being prepared and giving us excellent briefings. And I think this is our opportunity as commissioners to learn a lot about the county and our organizations and our departments and how things work. And I think this is very, very good for all of us and the public too, to hear how county government works. Maybe there's a lot of folks that are not interested in these things, but I think that there's many people who are. And this is a very healthy discussion to spend 5 days talking at this depth. And I know I ask a lot of questions, but I learned so much, and I hope that everyone else learns as well. I know that there's a lot of government organizations that don't spend this kind of time at this type of process. I think every year we do this, it gets better and better and better. And this year, I think, has been by far the best budget week we've had since I've been a commissioner. Obviously, balance is hard. We hear the competing ideas and challenges. Every single year I've been here, we've had in fact, I think the first year I was here, we had $8 million challenge. How are we going to solve an $8 million imbalance between the expected revenues and the needs that were presented that year? And every year we've had challenges like this. And so I have no doubt that we'll continue to lean forward and find solutions to these very, very challenging times. We have to balance public safety, infrastructure, human services, and quality of life. Those are all four very different parts of a county government, but they are all screaming for attention. And it seems it might feel impossible right now, but this is the most important thing we do as a commission. Out of everything we touch in elected offices, this is the most important thing we do, is find a way to balance the burden of government with these services we just talked about. So I'm very proud of you all, Lindsay especially. You are tremendous, and Tom, you did a great job getting ready for today. And I know that this process takes basically a year-long process. You don't just start last month. You start basically as soon as we adopt the budget. You start again, and it seems like it never actually ends. And then if you add in there the pandemic and the extra work you had to do, Lindsay, to deal with all the COVID challenges and pandemic and now ARPA money, I don't know how you do it. So go ahead, you have a comment.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, but I mean, it is a huge team effort, and so I appreciate you saying my name, but please say finance, because they're phenomenal.
Let me just wrap up and say I'm extremely impressed with Sedgwick County government. I think we are, not us necessarily, but I think you are the best there is. I'm very, very impressed with Sedgwick County. And I think we have so much to be proud of as a community. We do a good job, and I think that we're all feeling challenged, of course, when we hear this many requests at one time. It just feels overwhelming and kind of impossible right now. It feels, Commissioner Lopez hasn't been through this. I'm not sure you watched this last year, but it feels overwhelming. But I have faith in the process. I have faith in our staff. We will find a way to solve all these problems. It feels overwhelming today, but I have no doubt we'll continue the inertia and the momentum we have as a county government. So thank you for all you do.
Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you. Can you just walk us through the logistics of how it's going to be voted on? So, for example, we have all these decision packages. What if 3 commissioners want one part of the decision package, but 2 of them don't? Like, how is that going to work out? You're going to put it in the budget. We're going to vote on the whole budget and say, I don't want one little piece of the budget. Okay, can you walk us through that again?
So what we'll be doing over the next weeks is dissecting the notes from the meetings. We will begin to craft the recommended budget. We will have consultation sessions with you on things that were disputed or close and try to get a consensus as we go through this process of what we think commissioners want to see. Mm-hmm. When we present the recommended budget, and I think Lorian said that was July 14th, I'm hoping it's 99% there, okay. But it will not be 100%, which is then why we need to go to the people and your constituents and hear again from you for last minute tweaks. And then at the end of the day, you will vote, of course, on the budget on, I think I heard Lorian say August 25th. But until then, there's discussion and there's massaging of this, probably about a 96% complete budget today, but we've got a lot of issues that you guys have brought up that we need to factor in. And again, based on what we hear from workshops and this continued dialogue, we're at the 1st of May, this continued dialogue all the way through mid-June will be manicuring that budget. We won't vote on anything until August, but we try to get it worked out between now and then. And Lindsay, do you want to add anything to that, or Lorian, as you see? I guess I must have said the right thing.
So then on adoption day, the last 2 years we've had the option to, if we wanted to put in anything or take anything out, and you had this great little spreadsheet that was a formula of things. I think that's important to discuss. So can you please elaborate on that?
You want to talk about that, Lorian? The live.
Yes, we have, it's called Levy Live, and we can track things that you're wanting to change and how that would change the budget, and we'll put that up on the screen for you so that you can talk through your options and what that would affect if we put it in or out.
Okay, so but the hope is to not have to do that day, and that commissioners will get into all the ins and outs of things that they want to change before that day. Is that what you prefer?
Well, we'd like it that way, but we understand that
Okay.
the commission has many constituents to report to, so we've got to be flexible.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Okay. Observations, Ms. Lopez, from anything? Okay. David, got any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, it's a short 3 months from here before we're going to be adopting a budget. And I know there's been a tremendous amount of work that's gone into it up to this point. There's going to be a lot more work in the next just a little over 3 months before we do formally adopt a budget. I agree with Commissioner Howell that we do need to have an evening meeting, so I'm glad we've got that scheduled. I think that's important. Whether it's in this building or some other building, it doesn't make me any difference. It's worked in this building the previous years. Our Courthouse Police have been able to get people in, and I have not seen any problem whatsoever getting folks into this building. I know Tony would feel a lot better because I saw his head going up and down when we were talking about doing it here rather than doing it remotely. And, of course, he has to support us. But most importantly, as we go forward, I hope the staff recognizes that we are doing everything we can as a commission to take a look at what it's going to take to be able to retain the personnel that we have here and to recruit new folks to fill all the numerous positions. This has probably been the most difficult group of discussions that we've had since I've been here. Because if we talk to ComCare, and we've got hundreds of openings, if we talk to EMS, the sheriff, doesn't matter which organization we talk to, every single one of them is experiencing personnel problems. So as we move forward, I hope that our staff recognizes that we are trying to figure out what we can do in order to be able to retain, I'll say it right yet, the great folks that we have here in Sedgwick County and recruit others that are just as good. So I look forward to the next little over 3 months to see how that this all washes out. We will have contention, I'll guarantee you. But in the end, on August 25th, I guess it is, we will adopt a budget and we will spend $450 million next year somehow. But in the meantime, we got another 101 million, something like that we've got to figure out what to do with. 50 million this year. So our staff is going to be very busy working those issues at the same time. So we've overstressed our staff for the past year. We're going to overstress the staff, I think, the next year. And I'm looking forward to the time when we can just kind of take a deep breath and move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Lopez?
Thank you. Well, I appreciate all of this because obviously coming into this new, it's a whole lot at once. So I appreciate breaking all of that down and kind of explaining everything and why you're asking for all these things. It's helpful to put it together. The only thing that I would ask, or I would like to see a number on, is that wellness support mobile app that the sheriff's office is using. I would like to see what that would cost to expand that out to more departments or the county as a whole, because I think, making sure that our county staff has, availability to talk about anything mental health when things come up would be really helpful. So if I could see that, but beyond that, I really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you, Commissioner Lopez, for sparking something. Okay, so Impact, we had talked about negotiating with Impact for not just a number of visits per person, but a number of visits for Sedgwick County as a whole, because not everybody uses theirs. And so how can we, I don't know that that's really even for this discussion, but that made me think of that. So I wonder where we're at with that, or when we can get an update as to when we could have that discussion with them.
So later on this year, we will be looking at a new RFP for our services. And at that point, we would look at it.
Okay.
We'll continue through the end of the contract this year, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Compliments, I echo all the compliments. I think you all know how much I appreciate leadership of the county and the management and the employees. I'd like to also add, I know we were told that Daryl Haynes received an award from the Young Lawyers section, but also at that same event, Justin Wagner received one of the President's Awards for his outstanding work in addressing the COVID pandemic legal issues. So my congratulations, Justin, as well. I know he's worked hard, and Daryl, so we have 2 award recipients today. So if nothing else, then we will adjourn for the day, and we will see. We have a meeting tomorrow, 9 o'clock. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Oh, it was Wampo today.